We should bring that back.
I went by Jake's crib the other day. He was out there smoking some good stuff.
Chicken.
No, I was about to say.
No, I guess
He's smoking some great stuff.
no. I mean,
Hey, Coach jumped
we're not
all
on
over
there.
that.
We're not on there yet, are we?
Yes, we are.
I'm talking about he was cooking, smoking
cooking. He was cooking all right. He's cooking with fire. Let's start our Facebook page too, please, Dave.
All right.
YouTube's up. Let's welcome in the Facebook crowd and get started.
Damn, Coach, giving away all my secrets, man.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of UGA Sports Live with Coach Donnan. My name is Rodney DeBulsey. Of course, we call the show UGA Sports Live with Coach Donnan because Coach Jim Donnan is on the end there. He's not smoking anything, but our middle guy here is he's a great smoker of all things. Jake Roos, our recruiting guru at UGAsports.com. If you have questions about recruiting, hit him up. If you have questions about the Georgia-Florida game, send them to Coach Donnan. If you have questions about the food in front of us here at Champy's, ask me. I think I've had everything on the menu about 37 times. That's why
we haven't eaten our way through it.
Yeah, so we are live at Champy's. If you're watching us on Facebook, we appreciate it. I'm glad you're on the 365 Game Day. If you're watching us on 11 Live or any other pages, give them a like. We'd appreciate it. If you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe to our page because this Saturday, Coach Donnan, Dane Young, and Brent Rollins are going to have a watch-along party. So if you're watching the Georgia-Florida game and you don't want to hear the guys who don't follow Georgia football day in and day out call the game, go over to our YouTube page, and on your second screen, on your laptop, your phone, your tablet, watch Coach Donnan, Dane Young, and Brent Rollins. They're not calling the game. They're not doing that, but they are giving you analysis and insight that you will not get anywhere else. We did a best-of clip that I thought was fantastic. Showed some of the calls that Coach Donnan was talking about, his philosophy, a couple funny bits in there, and his singing voice, his talented singing voice.
You got some pipes,
what was the singing about?
Yeah, living on Tulsa time.
Oh, good Lord. I can do a lot better than that. I'm not country, man. I'm rock. I got to get the oldies on there.
There we go. So if you get a chance, go check that out. We got a lot to talk about. Big shout-out real quick to our friends at Athens Ford, Aaron Overhead Doors, Europe High, Academia Brewing Company, and Cable East, our good friends over there. Coach, it's the Georgia-Florida week. Kirby and his players on Monday – very proper in their discussions, of very respectful, no locker room material, no shots taken, they were very, very careful in all of their conversations. Did not give away anything. I guess we spoke to all of them for maybe an hour, all told.
Yeah.
Not one interesting thing said the entire day. I mean, well, other than Lawrence Cager. Coach Smart said we think we might have him back, and then he's tweeting out pictures. Looks like he might be back. I think the complexion of this game changes a lot with him coming in. Your thoughts heading into the Georgia-Florida weekend?
Yeah, the thing about a game like this, everybody knows what it means to both teams, and you got to be really careful about degrading your opponent or saying something. We always talk to our players, and Kirby does the same about, hey, just talk about yourself, respect your opponent, and understand that, hey, it's all on the line Saturday. Hey, you're playing for the SEC East Championship because both of us have a loss, and if you lose this game, then pretty much put you out of, because the other team would have to lose twice because they got the head-to-head on top of the one loss they have. So I think my main focus watching our team and watching the last week or so, the way our kids are acting, is just hey, we got to forget about some of the negative things that have happened and accentuate what our strengths are. Florida's had some trouble stopping the run, particularly the last 2 weeks, even though they've had some guys that'll be playing that haven't played, but they've given up over 200 yards rushing against South Carolina and LSU. Rushing game is our strength. Having Cager back will be huge because he's the kind of guy that can make the impossible catch look routine and make a play that you got to have in the clutch. And hopefully some of these younger guys have had a chance to keep improving here during the open date. But a lot to cover. We got a lot of – I can talk forever about all these different things. But,
well, that's why everybody's tuned in. So
I just want to mention that that we've got to talk about what we can do and what we can't do and what's happened in the past and all that. We need to dwell on what we haven't done, because I'm sure that's in the back of everybody's mind, particularly with South Carolina losing to Tennessee like they did. So Kentucky certainly prospered from playing in the rain the week before. They played a really good game last week against Missouri in the rain and did a good job. And it says a lot for having a turf field. I mean, the footing was a lot better in that game with the rain, even probably worse than it was in ours. But I just think overall our team is a lot better than everybody's giving us credit for around the country. I really do, and I feel like we'll play lights out Saturday.
What did you think of this? Roddy mentioned to start the show that Georgia, very careful in what they said. Sean Davis yesterday on DeAndre Swift said, looks like a normal running back to me. He's quick. You just have to play him. He's no average running back, but you know what I'm saying.
Well, that's one of their defenders talking, and that's easier said than done. I think one of the real keys in this game, as an old coach scouting and watching, is Florida's ability to get Swift down in the open field. They're not a real good tackling team secondary-wise. Their front seven makes a lot of their tackles, prominent tackles. Their secondary is more of a man cover team. So because of that, they're covering their man and they're not in position to make tackles. So they count on their forcing unit to do that. So I think open field tackling is going to be paramount, and that's easier said than done against Swift. That's one of the things South Carolina did tremendous job of. Their linebackers, their perimeter guys made tackles that they need to make because their defensive line freed up the point of attack, and really not freed up, really stood tight in there and freed up their backers and also. Hey, you can say that, but, there's a little bit – their coach has said some things in the offseason, about us and done that since he's been there. That's just his style. So we'll see if he can break the jinx. He hasn't won against Kirby. Usually when you haven't beaten somebody, you probably say a lot of things to try to stimulate that, but hasn't beaten Kirby yet, to my knowledge, has he? Maybe he did down to Lake playing golf or something like that.
I
wouldn't think he could beat him in golf watching that swing of his, the one I'm seeing.
Honestly, I love it. I think it's great to have a little bit of chippiness going into this game. Guys chirping at each other, that's great too. Brent Tucker here, I do want to we got a bunch of questions today. If you got some, send them in for sure. But this is an interesting question. Because it's something we haven't really had to think about much in the Kirby Smart tenure. Brent Tucker wants to know, he says, as the Georgia coach in 2019, what do you feel is more important, consistently beating Florida now or consistently making the playoffs? I know they go hand in hand, but thoughts?
That's a great thought. To me, how do you make the playoffs without beating Florida?
Well, exactly. I think that's got to be a given pretty much. So then thereby.
And here's the thing. If Kirby were to beat Florida and not, then you get to the SEC championship, lose that, and you're playing in some bowl game, people are going to consider that season a letdown. Okay, having played for a title, having been to the playoffs, knowing you look at those recruiting classes, number one class, the top 5 class prior to that, the two number ones. His first class wasn't as great, but you're in that transition year, and you're not people. He gave them an SEC title. You beat Auburn. Everyone's like, that's great. What's next? This fan base wants to be in the playoffs. Even beating Florida, you can point back and say, hey, we beat Florida. We beat Tennessee. We beat South Carolina. We beat Notre Dame. They don't give a damn. They do not give it. Getting in the playoffs is it. If you can lose to Florida, make it to the playoffs, and it doesn't matter.
I think every year. I think you would take that every year.
Yeah.
You saw last year we didn't make the playoffs, and everybody felt like it was not the kind of season you need to have. But you created a situation here where the expectancy level, and a lot of it's based on the fact that Georgia hasn't won a championship since '80, so everybody's hungry for one. But
famished.
It's really an overwhelming situation for any team to try to get to the Final Four anymore. You just see some of these upsets around the country. It's just Oklahoma last week looked like they hadn't even practiced when you watch them play Kansas State. And I know their defense is not that great anyhow, but But I just think we can talk about all these what's and ifs, and that's a good question by Brent. But you got to think that your number one goal every year is to beat your rivals. Number 2, make the SEC play a championship game, and number 3, get to the playoffs. Because if your number one goal is to make the playoffs and you don't make it, then what else? I mean, I think that it's hard to be realistic there. I mean, certainly all of them go together, but
well, and certainly this year, absolutely. I mean, it's you can't separate the two. If you have any hopes of making any sort of postseason run, you've got to pull off the win on Saturday.
Yeah, but Coach Donnan had talked about this fact that's, one of his worst criticisms was, going up against some of Georgia's rivals, and people just lost their mind over it. They couldn't see past the success he was having because, you're doing great, your win percentage is through the roof, but you lost to Tech. Is that so he's got a great question there because some people are just so caught up in beating. There's a guy in their office who went to an opposing school who gives them hell when they come back in on Monday if they lost. All these people that saw the little the back and forth with Dan Mullen, taking shots at Kirby Smart, talking about remember the blind squirrel comments?
Sure.
They remember stuff like that. They have a Florida fan who's a client or a boss or a best friend or who he has the house down the street who you hate his kids. And if Georgia loses to Florida, then that guy's going to put up his Florida flag and give you some crap about it at church. So to some people, beating your opponents is more beating that rival is more important than anything else. To the vast majority of the fans, though, big donors, casual to the casual fans, if you say, hey, okay, you lost to Florida, but did Florida make the playoffs? No, you did. Right. You can throw that back in their face, and that works just – I mean, South Carolina fans can crow all year. You got 365 days you're going to have to hear about South Carolina whipping your tail in Sanford Stadium, even though, 4 turnovers and a couple missed field goals. But they get to brag about it. But then at the end of the season, did you play for the SEC title? Did you make the playoffs?
Did you make a bowl?
Yeah, sure.
No, but we beat your ass. So, you see how that works.
True story. I shouldn't have said that. But I think with the money that's been spent with our program and the commitment that's been made by so many people to facilitate everything that Kirby needs, then, the expectancy level continues to grow.
That's very true.
And I think getting off to such a quick start made it look like it was easier than it probably is. You know what I mean? We did it the second year. He did it, and then everybody expects it. But I do feel like that with the talent that he continue to get in and hopefully continue to develop, you're gonna see that. And we've had a little bump in the road here with the situation with the receivers we lost and the combination of that and the guy getting kicked off, that you end up with a position where you need to play better at that position. You know what I mean? So when we're going to be facing that every year now with guys going out early, and that's why anybody wants to know about Kirby wanting to have this home situation. We got to get those good players in here, and the more recruiting weekends you can have, the better chance you got.
He cracked me up yesterday when they were talking about that. Someone asked the question, hey, we hear you're going to petition for an extra recruiting weekend. He said, I don't know, do you think Alabama and Tennessee are going to try to help out Georgia and Florida to get an extra recruiting weekend?
Yeah, hey, Nick, we'd like to have it be okay if when we get these kids down there, we can entertain. What?
Yeah.
Are you serious? But hey, I'm at the lake, man. I can't talk.
But to be fair, some of these other schools are also playing neutral sites. Now, granted, they're not always playing SEC teams, but it's one of those things when Nick Saban keeps playing in the new dome in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Sure. Like, hey, I'm playing Virginia. I'm playing whoever.
A Chick-fil-A kickoff game.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's like
we play Virginia next year, don't we?
Yeah. So you're like, hey, maybe we expand this out. There's a lot of teams that play neutral sites.
Sure.
So maybe if you don't get it passed by the SEC, but you get it passed by the entire NCAA, say, look, we can have more fun.
That would just be cool, man.
We have more opportunities to recruit. We will play more neutral site games. We'll expand the brand if we have the ability to host, the host recruits at these games.
Yeah, I just don't see it happening.
I don't either, but I'm just saying there's that possibility.
I mean, we got Clemson on the horizon coming up over there. I just don't I don't think that anybody in their right mind around the SEC would like for us to entertain prospects at the Clemson game in Atlanta.
Yeah, I bet.
Well, I'm just saying, but if you had Clemson, the ACC voted to do it as well. The Pac-12, the Red River Shootout. You can host recruits there. All of a sudden, it's like, hey, this is.
They used to let us do that in the '80s. Every other year, Texas would get to be the host, and then we would be the host. But we would always sneak over and talk to them when they were the host. Give them $100 bill to go ride the rides.
Well, am I totally off here though?
Hey, here's some corn dogs.
Is Georgia the only? Are Georgia and Florida the only ones that play an SEC matchup on a neutral site? I can't think of another one, right? Yeah, yearly.
Yeah, I think so.
I think that's it.
No, you're wrong. Don't. Texas A&M and Arkansas play in the Jerry Dome every year.
Is that right? Oh, I didn't know that was a permanent
How about that?
thing.
Isn't that right?
Is Texas A&M in the SEC? Because we never see them.
Hey, you
But
get them in a couple
Arkansas,
weeks.
Arkansas technically is in the league, but the last time they got a victory, Roddy was getting a haircut.
Yeah. Chad Morris guaranteed a win this weekend against Mississippi State.
He did?
He did.
Are you serious?
He certainly did. What does he
Where'd
have to
you see
lose,
that?
man?
Well,
He's smoking at your house.
He guaranteed to win, really?
He guaranteed a win this weekend.
I'm glad to hear him say something besides, that's just not acceptable.
Yeah, right.
Way we play is not acceptable.
Yeah.
All right. I want to get. I want to hit
that.
I want to hit one big question here before we move on here. Obi-Wan over on the board at UGASports.com wants to know, Coach, what are the biggest concerns you have about what Florida's offense and defense present respectively?
Okay, number one, I worry about their wide receivers on our secondary, particularly against our nickel players, as many receivers they have. I worry about us putting enough pressure on Trask to get him to get uncomfortable in the pocket. And we're going to try to do that with a 4- and 5-man rush because you got to defend all these guys. You just can't line up. So hopefully Cam will be ready. The other thing, we got to tackle P. Ryan and not give him any kind of chicken manure runs, where he breaks a tackle and gets 15, 20 yards. Those are things to worry about on defense. On offense, we got to make sure that we reestablish our running game against their defensive front. I don't care which one of those guys play for them. We're bigger, stronger, and we can run the football on these guys. And we got to be able to make some plays in the passing game when the other team knows we're passing. By that I mean protecting, throwing, catching, separating, make those plays. And then in the kicking game, our kicker's got to keep up with their punter, who's a really change-the-field type punter. If our guy punts like he has the last 2 weeks, we'll be okay. So that's as quick as I can give them to you.
Let me ask you this. You mentioned the wide receiver core. You think Florida gets any, mojo by looking back at the Notre Dame tape and seeing what Cole Kmet was able to do from the tight end position, knowing that they got a pretty similar player, a pretty outstanding tight end in Kyle Pitts?
Yeah, I mean, that's for sure. But we were shorthanded there, and we were playing the outside guys with double coverage. I don't know that you can play a team that can run the ball like Florida can, playing 2 deep looks and covering up your corners. Having Campbell back will alleviate that. We can spin a safety down, and we can, like I said early on, if people were listening, our nickel guy being able to cover is going to be the guy on Pitts. And I didn't say that succinctly enough, but 84 Pitts, when you go into the stadium, watch him warm up, he's a difference maker. He's a nightmare matchup for everybody. He really destroyed LSU in the first half, so we got to do something about him. Even Coach Ogeron recognized, we got to stop 84 in the second half, and that's what they did.
Who do you put on him?
Well, we're going to use Webb, I'm sure. We might use a combination of Webb and Devod Wilson, but also, play a little inside-outside with Webb and LeCount as far as that type of deal. But, you're not going to shut down these wide receivers on the outside. I mean, it's just, I even saw Miami completing passes last night. So, I mean, I'm talking about the Miami Dolphins, 0-8 Dolphins. But so you're not going to shut them down, but you got to eliminate. And that was a great example Saturday of Auburn doing a good job of, even though the guy completed a high percentage, they didn't give him a lot of deep throws. I mean, they really, if you watch the film or watch the game, they were walking to their coverages a lot. They weren't just lining up. They were moving around, and they gave them a mirage. And like, when you go into a parking lot and you show a guy a $50 bill when you walk in there, but you actually give him a $5. You're moving around a little bit, show him a 50, give him a 5, and they didn't give him anything deep. So that's what we got to do. We got to mix up our coverages, and we got to one of the enemies on our side now, Coach Warren. He went against those guys in practice.
Sure.
He's got a good idea of what their routes are and how little nuances. If he leans a little bit like this, does he do a double step? Does he do an inside step when he's going to the outside first? Or all those little things might help us a little bit. But overall,
but he would not. He would never give up secrets like that, would he?
Why do you think we hired him?
Do you think that it gives Georgia any advantage?
No, I mean, he's a good coach. I think our secondary's played within the realm of all the things that happened to our secondary. The injuries we've had, I've been really impressed with the way Coach Warren, good technique guy. He replaced a heck of a coach in Coach Tucker, and we also lost, Tyson Summers, and we lost some good help back there, and he's doing a good job with it. And I thought Kirby made a good point, which a lot of people thought, hey, he's underselling and all that, but our defense really hasn't had a chance to play against a really offensive team that has the running and passing capabilities that Florida does. Notre Dame, when we played them, didn't have any running game. They were trying to throw swing passes and stuff like that for their runs. But even though their O-line is limited as far as experience, they've gotten better. But Trask has a tendency, though, to turn the ball over or have fumbles. He's had 5 strip balls this year where he's back there and gotten hit, and the ball's been on the ground. And in a game like this, just as important to cause those, it's just as important to recover some of them too.
Sure.
So hopefully we'll get some of those strips against Trask, who's doing a good job. I mean, the guy's come in there as a backup and played phenomenal in the game against Kentucky and had a great game in the second half. That's one thing that worries me a little bit about Florida. You can say all you want to, but I think 6 or 7 times in the 2 years that he's been the coach, they've been down in the fourth quarter and been able to come back. A couple times this year against Miami, against Kentucky, and then against South Carolina, they came back and won the game being down in the fourth quarter. Did you know that, Roddy?
I did not. That's why we have you on the show, so I don't have to look up stuff like that.
But you can look up some stuff on some trucks.
I can, and I want to give everybody a quick shout-out to our friends over at Athens Ford. Right now, when you swing out there, they have 1,200 vehicles to choose from. Now, that's a lot more than we normally see out there. They normally, when I look on there, they normally have around 1,000, so they got 200 extra. So what do you think they want to do? Want to move them. They got some good deals. Speaking of, you can get the 2019 Ford F-150 XL STX Super Cab for $2,800. Can't beat that. The 2019 Ford Expedition Limited, $13,000 off. If you want a 2020 Ford Explorer, which I can tell you is a fantastic vehicle, they have $7,000 off the XLT Limited Platinum and ST. And the one I really thought, having a kid who's going to be looking at getting a car soon, 2019 Ford Escape. Brand new vehicle, 2019 Ford Escape. The Escape's a little bit smaller than Explorer, but still a good mid-size compact SUV, kind of hybrid right in the middle there. $17,100.
Wait, your kid's getting a brand new car?
No, I'm just saying when I'm looking at these, used vehicles and stuff like that,
sure.
I'm like, well, hell, you can get a new one for $1,700. I mean, Jesus, a brand new one without any. I mean, $17,000, $17,100 for a 2019. Not this isn't some 2016 plus. If you go to athensford.com, the little pop-up window says take $500 off any vehicle. You just give them your name and address, and they'll send you the code for it. We actually had a guy swing out there.
A little testimony.
Yeah. 1501 Dog on the board says, firstly, I want to give a shout-out to Athens Ford. I've been pleased with their good work on my Ford F-150. Great customer service in the service department. Definitely recommend it. So, I mean, hey, that's an unsolicited testimonial, and like I said, their service department is number one, bar none. And he has a question. Let's if he gives us a compliment, we can hit a question. He says, Coach, with Dan Mullen being an offensive mind and Kirby being a defensive mind, how do you think the two match up? Does past experience play a factor here?
Well, they've had past experience. I mentioned that since Mullen's been a head coach against Kirby, certainly when he was the offensive coordinator at Florida, and Kirby was D coordinator at Alabama. He had some wins over Kirby, but since he's been the head coach and Kirby's been the D coordinator and head coach, I think it's 9 straight that Kirby's won it over him. So we'll just have to see how much it all boils down to, but it really gets down to the players executing what you want to do. Mullen's certainly a very good game manager type guy that really does a good job of using his personnel groupings and a lot of different motions and shifting and things to create some, like we said, some mismatches for their tight end, particular on linebackers and safety. So, and then Kirby is just very much a hands-on coach that really knows his defensive system inside and out, and works very well with Schumann in the press box and landing on the field of making and Coach Warren and Coach Scott the necessary adjustments. You know, if somebody hurts you with something, it's one thing the first time, but if they keep hurting you, then you know something's wrong there. You got to get it right. So. But again, I like the fact that we've gotten some experience for Daniels, and now we've got hopefully Campbell back with this toe situation. And as far as the head-to-head, the proof's in the pudding. To this point, Kirby's definitely had the edge. I mean, I think certainly got to be in Mullen's head a little bit too. And we've had the edge as a Georgia team every time we played against Coach Grantham on defense, who's, you know, I will tell you that they do have a defensive signal that everybody in our fan base can look for Saturday, particularly from the players. So watch out there when they go like this. That's one of their number one signals, because they're not sure what they're supposed to do. And we've all seen that before. But he's a good coach. They just do a lot of stuff, and sometimes they get confused. And hopefully we'll be able to knock them off the ball, and plus confuse them some too.
Speaking of history, you mentioned the possibility of putting a guy like Mark Webb on Kyle Pitts at the tight end position. You think it gives them any advantage over, you know, one or another? They played high school ball together.
I think it's kind of interesting that they're both from up above the Mason-Dixon line. They're playing down here in Jacksonville, Florida. You know, they played against each other in high school. But you know a little bit about each other, having gone against. You know, you've seen them, but where it really helps you is just the respect factor. You know, you can see a guy on tape all you want to, but if you've gone against a guy one-on-one, you respect his ability, or you don't respect it because you know you can beat him like a tom-tom. So it's just. I would think there's mutual respect there, and certainly watching both players play, I got a lot of respect for both of them. And Webb's played hurt some this year, but I think he'll be ready to go 100% Saturday.
I think Kirby nailed it. He echoed what you just said. You can look at the offensive mind versus defensive mind. He was kind of asked about that in his press conference, and he said, look, guys, it's going to come down to players versus players, not X's and O's. It's who executes. We went back and looked at the tape over the last 2 weeks, and I know that a lot of people want to go, you know, give Coley grief about play calling. Hey, maybe it's terrible. I don't know. But in a lot of those plays, we saw a guy who didn't do his job, and the plays that failed, a lot of times there was an execution issue. If everybody executes, then to me, in other words, you have to have that execution before you can say, hey, this was your call beat my call. Because of somebody,
right.
You know, and I know it's boring to call out execution as boring, and if people say you're blaming the players, and somehow you're supposed to magically know that your guy is not going to execute that play.
Well, it's a two-way street. I mean, there's blame for everybody, and there's glee for everybody when you're doing well. But I think when I look at a tape of a team, I look at a lot of things to see if they're a well-coached team. Just at the line of scrimmage, do they line up and look like a football team? Do they look like they know what they're doing before it starts? We never have many situations where our guys are lined up improperly. I'm talking about we've had a few motion penalties and things like that. So that's the first thing. The second thing, can they run the ball effectively? We've run the ball with a lot of effectiveness all year. Can they pass protect? Our pass protection is good, not great, but it's good enough. We've had some situations in our O-line where we've had 3 different O-linemen this year that were starters be lost during the game and miss the game. Wilson at right tackle, Schaefer at left guard, and Kinley at left guard. So that has a tendency to knock your lineup out a little bit.
Didn't Ben get hurt a little bit too?
Yeah, I'm just talking about starters. Ben is a part-time starter too, but I'm just saying that in itself has caused a little bit of problem, and the fact that we got some young receivers that haven't just come out and played lights out yet, but shown flashes of that. But so I look at that, and then I look at tendency-wise and all. We're doing almost the same thing. I saw where Dane and Rollins did a good job comparing Coach Coley and Coach Chaney. We're running about the same formation, the same amount of inside zone, same outside zone. We've created some counter plays. To me, the judgment of our team is going to be the next 4 or 5 games, not the past 7, because a lot of things have happened. We've had a loss, but how you finish, how much have you improved from first of the year to now? How much are we going to continue to develop some guys? Like, I see some guys out there that are really improving. I've seen Blaylock get a lot of confidence in practice, and he might jump out there and do it. Robertson, every time he's been called on, has been pretty good, and maybe he'll continue to be. A guy like Lewis, Seen. I mean, this guy, every time you see him in a game, he made that great play at the end of the game where he knocked the play down and rushed the passer against Tennessee. He's another guy who's looming on the horizon, not to mention those defensive ends we got. So everybody, well, you're real optimistic. You're optimistic, but one of the reasons I am is based on fact. I'm just basing on fact that we have, and what you got to do is you got to look at potential and performance. At this point, our performance is not as close enough to our potential as it needs to be. If we can get that up a little bit, I'm going to be real happy.
I don't think they've hit their potential all year.
No, certainly not.
Well, we did against, we played pretty flawless against Arkansas State, but that doesn't really count.
Yeah.
But, I just think that our strength against their weakness Saturday, O-line versus, I don't say their D-line is a weakness, but their ability to stop the run is pretty vivid that they haven't been able to. So, and people if they get mad at us running, not throwing the ball a lot Saturday, get mad. We only threw it 9 times 2 years ago. And what was it, 42 to something?
Yeah, 42-7. Speaking of, you mentioned, the rush defense for Florida. Seth 7227 says, Coach, if you're calling plays, what are some of the things that you can do to kind of expose Florida's weakness? What are some of the plays?
Well, I think one of the first things you got to do is find a way to make their secondary support the run, whether it's formation wise or whether it's moving some people around or whatever it might be, motion wise. But make that guy be in a position where he's got to tackle our backs in the open field, and by that you got to get them to the second level, which we haven't been able to do against Kentucky. We did it pretty well in the second half. Against South Carolina we didn't, but so I would say expose their secondary in the open field, undersized, fast guys, but not great tacklers. That would be the first thing. The other thing would be see if we can make some big plays. When people play man coverage, you break the line of scrimmage, that's when you get a lot of big plays. I could see Jake making some runs, avoiding the rush and picking up first downs if they're playing man on us. Not that that's his number one deal, but and I could see maybe a few more keeps maybe on zone read if they're going to continue to challenge us from the backside.
Do you roll him out any in this game?
Sure. I think a little half roll's good to get away from that pressure from Zuniga. How do you pronounce it?
Zuniga, yeah.
Zuniga, and who's a good player.
Well, that was going to be my second question. You're going up against a team with 2 great defensive ends. Guys who can pressure you a lot. How do you attack a team like that?
Well,
how did people attack Georgia when they had?
We got 2 good tackles there. First of all, they're going to be able to mano against them pretty good. But there's different ways you can put a guy in motion and chop back on him. Chip him. You can use your back on the coming out of the backfield. A couple years ago, we used Swift a lot like that. We let him come chip the tackle hit the guy and then run in the flat. I can see another thing that I was going to talk about, ways that we can attack them. I really like our backs against their backers and their different ways to, you certainly want to get guys open and separate on the perimeter with your wide receivers, but you don't want to hit your head against the wall if they can't get open. Boy, you got to think that nightmare for them covering Swift and Cook and Harrion out of the backfield.
Interesting here on DeAndre Swift from Shownuff253 over on the vent at UGASports.com. Shownuff253. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He says, looking at college football stats, it appears Georgia's explosive run plays of 20-plus yards are down compared to the past 2 years. Even though Georgia is on pace to match previous year's explosive runs of 10-plus years, this year the only player to produce those plays has been Swift by a large margin. He says, so, question is, has the lack of a legit two-headed monster running back rotation affected the number of explosive plays the offense as a whole can produce? Does Swift not having a true Robin to his Batman cause some of the offensive woes you're seeing this season?
He can make that point, and it certainly we don't have Michelle and Chubb, and we don't have Swift behind them. But, I think we're going to see, in the one game, Harrion couldn't even play, so most teams don't have but one guy that's a feature back that makes most of the yards. There's not a lot of them that have a two-headed monster. So as much as you'd like to have it, particularly with White looming on the horizon, hopefully that can come on. But I like the fact that Swift's running 20, 25 times a game. I mean, I like to see a guy lathered up like that, and that showed the difference in that Kentucky game in the second half. Give him the rock. And
I have to interject here, Coach, because if you go back and check out the watch-along party. Every time Swift wasn't in the game, Coach Dodd is like, where's Swift? Put him back in the game. Put him back in there. He wanted to see him lathered up, so he's not just saying that.
I like Harrion and I like
I know.
Swift, but, I just think –
well, you can tell he had the hot hand.
If the guy's rocking and rolling there, but the coaches have a good feel. Dell McGee's got a good feel for his kids, what they can do, and when they need to come in and out. I was anxious to get that first score, man. I tell you, I was just looming in the background, thinking this can't happen 2 weeks in a row. But
how important is that this week? That first score. I mean, I think getting momentum on your side in this matchup can be very key.
It certainly can help you and create doubt. We don't need any more doubt in our program right now. We got too many naysayers, and that's okay to have that. I understand. We got too many people talking about what's wrong instead of what's right, and that's okay too. That's their prerogative. But you don't want that here we go again philosophy to be pervasive to your team, and you talk about it's a 4-quarter game, and that's why I brought out those stats. I mean, that this team knows how to play in the clutch and come from behind, so you need to get ahead of them and keep the hammer down, but our team can come back too. I mean, we were behind against Notre Dame. We know what to do, but I think it's going to be back and forth, and I can see more points being scored on us than people would like, but just because of their explosiveness. I mean, you can have a good day out there if you're Champ Bailey, and somebody's going to run, beat you once in a while. I mean, let's just say this. You got 10 targets that they throw the ball at you, and you defend 8 of them. That's great, but if the 2 that you give up are touchdowns, hey, that's tough, and we play a lot of press man coverage, so I hope that and I'm sure we'll mix it up.
Well, you saw that back-to-back weeks, was it with Tennessee and South Carolina, where just one double move goes for a touchdown. It's like, yeah, you defended really well most of the time, but the one you gave up, the one tackle you missed, the one time you got suckered inside, it's a touchdown. And
that's what's tough.
Yeah, so it's in other words,
you're on an island. You're on an island there, You can't say deplane. Well, you got to stop them, man.
Well, you're not on an island if you reach out to our friends over at Air and Overhead Doors. Let me turn off the coach here. He can have a French fry.
You got me cut off.
Our friends at Air and Overhead Doors, 626 verified Nearby Now reviews, and they have them rated at 4.95 stars out of 5 stars. In other words, as good a rating as you can get. And I know I talk about how they do custom doors, and they'll fix your garage door opener, they'll fix springs, they'll fix panels that are broken. I did not realize they do gate operations as well. So if you have a gate you need to open up, they can install stuff like that too. If you need help from Ryan Lucia and all the Georgia fans at Air and Overhead Doors, just go to their website and book online. They'll come out when you tell them to. You book your meeting with them. They come out for free. You don't have to. It's not a charge. It's not like, hey, you guys need to pay for my expertise to come out here. That's a free visit, free quote, and the customer service is through the roof. Also, they do charity work. So if you get a chance, I'd support them because they support folks in their community. Good folks out there that when they see somebody in need every year, they go and help them out. So if you would, give our friends at Air and Overhead Doors a shout.
All right. This one from Athens Dog 05 on the board for Coach Jim Donnan. He says, what aspect of Florida's offense would you prioritize on defense?
You got to stop the big play with these receivers, and particularly Pitts, making sure that you don't give him anything easy for a big play. He's going to catch underneath stuff. I mean, he's a very valuable third down guy for sure, but you can't let him catch the ball in the wide open spaces and go for a touchdown. So stopping him, making sure that we don't give him a lot of easy runs either, too. We got to tackle well. Here's the thing. When you get in a game like this, I always used to talk about our players. You don't want to come back there on Sunday and watch, if I'd have made that tackle, we'd have been off the field. When you got a chance to make a play in a big game, a life-changing experience game for you, you got to make it. If that's a tip ball and you got a chance to intercept it, you got to do it. If it's a low catch and you almost catch it and you don't, hey, there's going to be a lot of those really close plays, and when you got a chance to make them, you got to make them. But I'm going to tell you what, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and be the 14th Mockingbird right now standing on one leg. The difference in this game is we got Fromm and they don't. Trask is a good quarterback. He's done some good things for him, but our guy's been to the dance. His ass is chapped about what's happened, and he's going to come out there and take over like he always does.
Well, and you got to think, too, I mean, as much as people are passionate about this game, Georgia fans, you may forget that Jake Fromm grew up a Georgia fan. I bet he hates Florida about as much as anybody out there.
So does Solomon Kinley.
Yeah.
Solomon Kinley, your left guard, who, in my opinion, two of his best games have been in Jacksonville Stadium.
He seems to thrive when he gets home, doesn't he?
He's at home. He's got 14 family members in the stands. He is ready to rock and roll when he's down there. And Kirby Smart was asked multiple questions about Mullen. He'll get more today in his press conference after the thing, I'm sure. But I'm going to tell you, he wants to win this game. This is a big game for him. He says, we can't get into rivalry games because you don't want to elevate one rivalry game over another. I can tell you for a fact from insiders inside the program, this is a game that he wants to win majorly. And I don't mean
he wants to eat.
Exactly. If that viral clip of him if that wasn't before the Florida game, I don't know what game it was, but I'm telling you, he may dislike Tech. He may dislike Tennessee. He may hate South Carolina.
Look,
there is a special.
He grew up on the line.
I'm just saying there is a special passion for the Georgia-Florida game. I'm not saying that helps. That doesn't get him a first down.
Sure.
That doesn't make a tackle in the open field. But when your coach comes to you and says, I need this game, I want this game. In other words, the motivation will be there. So
I think the motivation is one thing, but just to get the bad taste out of her mouth about everybody questioning so much. Not that he worries about that.
No.
It's just the idea that we need to reinvigorate our fan base to know that our team is really a very talented team that's going to play up to its potential, and that's all you want as a coach is, if you underplay and you give a game away, then it just eats at you, and we got to just there's no way you can ever get that one back, but you just can't let that one harbor the whole year. You know what I mean? You got to go back to playing our style, which I mentioned. I've got a lot of respect for Trask. He's done a heck of a job, but Jake at the line, Jake doing all the stuff that he does, he hadn't forgotten how to do that because of the South Carolina game.
We got a couple recruiting questions I want to get through real quick. Rule 76 Dog over on the board wants to know, he says, will the current committed offensive line be the offensive line that signs on early signing day? Any of them likely to push to February, and then are any of them possible flips? I do think you've got a very solid group there when it comes to how committed those guys are. Tate Ratledge is in. Cedric Van Pran is in. I don't see anything with Chad Lindbergh. Haven't heard anything that would lead me to believe he's looking elsewhere. You got Broderick Jones, who has mentioned he might push to February. We'll see if Georgia doesn't try to put a little heat on him as it gets a little closer to December. But he wants to take some visits, is what he said. He said Auburn, South Carolina, two teams to consider there as well. And then I know I'm missing one out of the whole group. Josh Braun. No worries about him either. I don't think that you got anything to be concerned about.
But a lot of it has
Braun.
to do with their high school situation as far as credits. If they can get in, a lot of that has to be factored in, because some guys just, even though they would like to, don't have the credits out of their high school to be eligible to go right into college. So,
well, and
if all of them, or could all of them come in early?
Broderick is not. Broderick is not an early enrollee.
That's why I don't blame him. Go visit those schools, eat some of their steaks and stuff.
I will say, I think that
he's a stud, and he's a complete stallion.
He's fantastic.
Just take for granted you've been hearing about all these guys up in the air and all, but we had this guy early, and I know how happy Coach Pittman and Coach Smart and Marshall Malco were when we got that guy.
He was throwing kids around as a sophomore.
The guy is a full-grown man.
Yeah, he's fantastic, and he looks better and better each time I get a chance to see him. Tyke Dogs on the board wants to know, looking way ahead, what incoming 20 freshmen would you project to make an impact on the 2020 season? Can't believe we're already talking about the 2020 season.
I think you're talking. That group you just had, because I think you see Isaiah Wilson and
Andrew
Thomas take off, and that's like, okay, well, where are your tackles? And I'm not saying that Tate Ratledge is your
or Broderick Jones, but
I can see Carter and Brinson coming in here. If we get Ringo, I can see. Yeah. He said committed guys, but we don't talk about guys that might be close to it.
I will say, too, the guy that I'm looking at that just jumps off the list to me, and I've said this for a while now, Marcus Roseme. I think that you're looking for some solidity in that wide receiver group. This is a guy who does all of the things that Kirby Smart asks for. Great blocker, great hands, very unselfish when it comes, he's not a diva, he's not a me guy out there. I think that he's a guy who can get in there, provide tough catches for you.
Right, and the other thing they do with him, which I like, is he's such a good skill guy that they just put him back there and let him run with it too, don't they?
Absolutely.
You've seen some of these track times on him too, and watch him run track. But wow, what
lift off Sherman.
Yeah,
and then we got Sherman.
Come on now.
Well, now, and I will say, it's interesting that you say that, because I was going.
Just go. Yeah, I'd left him off because you're right.
No, you're right. But Sherman, the thing about him is, and Coach was touching on this. Sometimes kids don't sign in that early period because they don't have the credits. The situation with Sherman is his school won't let him.
Yeah, he's in a tough school there. They don't.
No, there's a number of schools. I remember, I think the Bowl school down in Jacksonville won't let you do it either. There's a number they say, look, that's not an option. You can't leave.
Well, they say his thing is he said, I'll be
here throughout. They need that money for that last semester.
We can't early enroll, and they have a big celebration for all of the kids who are signing. Yeah. He said it's not a me thing. It's not a situation where it's going to be me signing on. It's going to be everybody up there at St. John's signing together on that same day. So, even though he'll push it past December, don't be worried about that.
There's an Atlanta school that where Brandon Cablano go to school.
If you hadn't asked me, I would probably have been able to tell you.
It doesn't matter, but it's one of the Atlanta schools. You can't.
I tell you, the other thing about it excites me about these young guys is so many of our young guys are getting redshirted. Just going to be studs like Godey and just trust. Man, oh man!
I wonder if with this.
Here's another thing that's going to help us.
Come out.
Another thing's going to help us this week too is getting Trayvon Walker back.
Marietta.
He's going to be able to jump in there and rush the passer on that go rush we got.
I'm sorry, Walton.
He's
at Walton.
Yeah, I don't think he can there. But yeah, getting Trayvon's back. If you get Cager back, I think that's gigantic. If you're getting Tyson Campbell back, now Florida's getting healthy too. So they should be.
Well, it's good. You want to play them at their best if you can. I mean,
but when you saw the difference, everyone's saw Notre Dame get blown out, and the first thing that lit up my timeline was Georgia only beat them by 6. Well, hey, from Saturday to Saturday is different. But I tell you what, let's see Michigan go in there and play without their starting cornerbacks. You had one that you knew was out, then you lost one early.
Can't make comparisons like that.
I
was surprised how easily Michigan and Notre Dame didn't react to the weather very well. Book just didn't look like.
Well, they didn't look like the same Notre Dame team that we saw. But if you have a situation where it's like, here's our game plan going in. Oh, we had one cornerback who's out, and we lose our first one in the first few minutes, or our other starting guy. That is a big change off the bat.
Exactly.
Coach, one from Chuck Ward here. He says, do you see Georgia holding Florida under 100 yards rushing? If they do, he said, I see us getting some big defensive plays versus their passing game.
Yeah, I think that's a key, Chuck, when we talked about the game, is limiting their chunk runs, where they don't run the jet sweep to one of these receivers and they get 15, 20 yards, or where P. Ryan breaks a tackle and gets 10, 12 yards. I would say hold them under 4 yards per rush. The thing that's hard to factor in there is how many times we'll knock Trask down, and that takes off the 100 yards. So, off the rushing defense helps us, when you get a sack. So, definitely that should be a factor there. Limit the big plays in the running game and tackle the guy when you got a chance to get him down early, get the loss. Because they're going to complete some passes. I mean, they're going to get 200 yards passing if we play great. I mean, they know what they're doing. Trask is impressive now. I mean, I've bragged on Fromm because he's played a lot more than Trask. But I tell you, for that kid to hang around like that and have the attitude he had and never been a starter even in high school and come in and do what he's done, it's very good on his part. It's good on the coaching's part. And it's obvious the kids believe in him, too. I mean, he's really given them because kids respect ability. They see a guy do something, and they know that he's helping them win. And so we got to do some things to harass him where he can't be happy in the pocket.
Kind of feels like a reverse situation of Jake Fromm's first year. He gets in, 8 plays into the season, stays in. It's like a made-for-Hollywood movie, takes you to the championship game, and you're like, if they'd won that game, you'd have been, Mrs. Fromm be able to sell the movie rights to that story. But now it kind of feels like that's the Trask stories out there. It just feels like, I don't want to say fate, but it just seems like everything's lining up for this to be a major story. Georgia needs to come in and end that movie early.
Right. We need to make it a horror movie.
Yeah. Speaking of horror and fun stuff like that, if you want to go by Academia Brewing Company, they have Booze and Barks. It's October 29th. That'd be Tuesday. It's a great event for the kids, and the kids will get to eat free, which is fantastic considering they have a chef out there. But they'll also be able to take place in a mini costume contest at 7 o'clock, followed by a Pets costume at 7:30. That's Booze and Barks. 7 o'clock costume contest for the little kids, pet costume contest at 7:30, candy and dog treats provided. They'll also have a trick-or-treat creation station where the kids can put together their own custom goodie bag. So not too shabby there. And then on Wednesday, if you can't get out today, on Tuesday, Wednesday, head over there for their trivia. They have a great trivia contest. Again, Academia Brewing Company, the best beer you're going to find. They run the gamut. They're not just, hey, come in and have our hops beer. They have seasonal beers,
tons of sours. Yeah, great stuff.
Doppelbox, versatile. Darks to lights to sours to everything you want. In other words, if you're a beer snob, you're going to find something out there. If you're a foodie, you're going to find something out there. Perfect for everybody. Easy parking, great location, great staff. So join our friends at Academia Brewing Company this week.
Let me ask you this question here. What was the best Halloween costume you ever wore growing up?
We were really poor. We didn't have a lot of costumes.
Give me one. What was your best costume?
Probably Chewbacca, because I actually had a Chewbacca mask. That was that would hand me down.
I would love to see you at a Chewbacca get up.
3-foot Chewbacca, yeah.
Let's see. I was a pretty good zombie one time. I made a real pretty girl one year. So that was, I guess that was, yeah.
I did the same thing when I was 9 years old. I was a girl, and I went to this party, and this kid asked me to go to a movie with him.
It's the legs, Coach. It's the legs.
Yeah, I don't know. I never did that again.
I was gonna say, by the way, I would love to see you try to get your dog into a Halloween costume. That would
Trick or treat.
Actually, I would put some fluff around her.
Let's get
just call her a tornado because you just spin in a
I
circle.
got us off. I got us off. Let's get some good questions.
Chuck
here.
Pearson shouts out and says, you got to release Nolan Smith on Kyle Trask. He also wants to know any word on Trayvon Walker. Kirby Smart did update his injury status yesterday. Seemed positive about him.
We just said we hope he's playing. Right?
He's back.
You know, he had surgery, which Roddy told everybody about that. People found out about a week later that he had it. But seriously, you got somebody at the hospital telling you this stuff or something?
I ain't going to talk about that.
All right,
Just say, no, we've been pretty good on the injuries and the stuff there. Like we were told everybody first about Schaefer and his neck brace and stuff like that. I'd like to see him get back. I don't know what his situation is, but
Cager, man, I think it's awesome. Well, let's go. What else we got?
Well, Chuck Pearson also wanted to shout out and say, hey, just for everybody coming down, they just got a year pie in Jacksonville. So there you go.
I mean,
hey, welcome
to
swing by and see our guys.
Welcome to my world.
Welcome to the 20th century. There, 70-plus locations opening up left and right. The cool thing about it, you know, if you're not in the mood for a custom homemade pizza that you get in about 7 minutes, so I don't know how you'd not be in the mood for that, but they also have great sandwiches and wonderful salads. We had a Capri salad the other day. But now they do the pasta thing. You can go in and get a custom pasta. You tell them what kind you want, what toppings you want in there, what, the cheeses, all the ingredients. They turn around, cook that sucker up for you. You got it made. So pasta,
I was thinking about your
salad.
pie on the way over here. I was listening to 50s on 5, and Dean Martin was singing That's Amore.
Oh, there you go. So that's
when the moon hits your eye like a big pizza.
See,
yeah, and
he's breaking out the pipes again.
Somebody and they sent us some nice pizzas on our last watch along show. So you got to watch us eat those. Fantastic food. If you want to become wealthy.
Open one.
That's it's a. People wonder how do you afford that nice new Ford F-150? Open your pie. You'll be able to buy 6 of them.
All right, Ronnie Brown, our good friend over on Facebook, wants to know. He says, it seems like the lead up to this game is perfect for UGA. According to national media, a high school team could stop the UGA offense, and the Patriots couldn't stop Florida. Do you see it as a little extra motivation considering Georgia is being sold as an underdog by everyone other than Vegas?
Definitely. I guarantee you that's been thrown out there, and that's a good analogy there about, people stopping and everything. But I like the matchups in this game with our O-line against their D-line, our running game against their running defense. Our pass defense is going to be challenged, no question about that. And it's going to be some back and forth in this game. It's not going to be a runaway game unless, something happens you just don't expect. But, boy, I tell you what, I just can't wait to see our team, get that monkey off the back as far as just really playing like they're capable of. I mean, we're about 13 months pregnant on offense, overdue to get it rolling. I just see against our defense, when I get to go out there occasionally, which I think our defense is good, I see some plays made by guys out there that just are very similar to the defense that we'll see against Auburn and people like that. And how about Auburn's defense last week? Woo, strong.
Absolutely, that's tough.
That's nightmare fuel there.
And that's so tough for for them that they had to drop that game because they were playing lights out.
The offense looked Jed Clampett.
Slim Mosley over on YouTube says,
Slim.
He says, dressed up as a girl, so now we know what Coach does to unwind from coaching.
That was back in the old days. Hey, you said that you did too.
I did.
Hey, I would have never said that if you hadn't said it too. Hey, Slim, you got that right, man. I got some makeup on the car too.
Cincinnati.
I tell you, that's one thing that drove me out of TV when they started doing that spray paint on the makeup.
Yeah,
I couldn't handle it. I used to lie and say my plane was late and come running in there at the last second so I wouldn't have to get that spray paint, man.
Cincinnati Dog on the board here. One quick recruiting question before we kind of wrap things up. He says, any new news on Keely Ringo? Seems like he had a great time at Oregon a few weeks ago. Has he ever attended a UGA game? Can't recall that he has unless it was G-Day. When is his official visit? Keely Ringo not been to a game this season. However, did come last year, I think, to at least one. Definitely came to G-Day and was here for that, and then came back at the end of summer to kind of cap off that big recruiting
weekend. He was there that weekend.
So,
there. He's been, for a guy from Phoenix, Arizona, to be here 3 or 4 times unofficially is just unheard of. So
no doubt.
But Oregon's got a lot of things going for him right now. I mean, 2 key guys that we're after, Sewell and this guy, look to me like I wouldn't think Texas is in it now, the way Texas is playing.
No, I agree. I think Oregon is kind of the one that's shaking things up here. But official visit for Keely Ringo scheduled to be in December, that all-important gala weekend. So be looking for him around then.
So he won't see a game this year?
I doubt it. I really doubt he will. It's not, it's not possible. Things change from week to week, and he's got an exceptionally unique situation in that his mother works for an airline and he can fly for free. So,
is that right?
Yeah, maybe he hops on and flies down. Who knows?
That's pretty cool. His mother, that's a real benefit.
All right,
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, when he was Lou Alcindor, worked in the summertime for Delta out there at the LAX, and that's how his family supposedly got back and forth to watch him play from New York.
No kidding.
Among other reasons, among a few Benjamins. But
all right, mouth-watering player of the week. Who's got to have a big performance this week, Coach, for the Dogs to pull it off in Gainesville?
I said I don't want to put any undue pressure, but I really feel like Jake will have to, not so much stat-wise, but just take care of the ball and distribute it. I think he's going to be, I really believe he's going to be the difference in this game.
Roddy?
I think it's got to be somebody offensively. You're going to have to score a lot because I expect Florida to put up points on the board.
What's the total on this game? Do you know, Dave, what's the total?
I do not know. I'm going to stick with I just don't see a receiver doing it just because they haven't shown me they could. Getting Cager back, Cager could be the guy. I could definitely see him just making huge catches and stuff. But if you're talking about mouth-watering guy, the guy I want to see give the ball to DeAndre Swift 25, 28 times, maybe a new record high in carries for him, or not touches. Let me not say carries. Get him the ball in multiple ways. I just think when Georgia got the ball back against Kentucky on that short kick, or they got it on Kentucky's side of the field, we turned to Coach last week. So what do you do here? 0-0. And Coach summed up, said, I would give my best player the ball and run him behind my best lineman. Next play, DeAndre Swift behind Andrew Thomas, 39-yard touchdown.
It's like he knows something.
I'm just saying. And sometimes you can call it predictable, but sometimes you're best on their best, and you see where the chips fall.
Burma Road. Get on that Burma Road.
Again, and then we know Zuniga. Both their outside linebackers great at PFF in the 90s. This is beyond elite. I think 85 and up is elite. These guys are phenomenal. They are fantastic. That's why my question to Coach, how do you attack? I mean, you got two great defensive ends out there, but maybe at some point you're like, hey, we're going off tackle with our best running back. And Coach made the point, tackling him in space is a nightmare. Let's see what your guy can do against him. Their DB says he's just another running back. Prove it.
All right.
And here's the thing. If they bring him down,
sure,
then they deserve to win.
Absolutely.
Sometimes I'm not saying –
not going to do it.
Well, that's the thing. If you're good enough to tackle him in the open space, then my hat's off to you. Congratulations. You're a hell of a player.
Well, you guys both went offense, so I'm going to go defense. I think Nolan Smith, this matchup, we talked about Kirby Smart growing up in Bainbridge. Look, he's from Savannah. He played at IMG. This matchup means a lot to him, too. He hates the Gators. This is a kid who I think can get in there, affect Trask, and has just been kind of chomping at the bit. There's so many opportunities where he's been like just seconds away from getting to where he needs to be. I think this week a big game for Nolan Smith puts on a big.
That's a big quarterback too, and that's a guy you want trying to bring him down. That's nothing against a Tariq McGee on a corner blitz or something like that. Yeah. That's 6'5", 240 pounds. He's thick. Send a monster like Nolan. When do you put Nolan Smith in the game? What downs? Start right off the bat.
I mean, I can't really project that. I mean, that's up to the coaches. But we got so many guys at that one position that
that's what I'm saying.
You don't take Aziz out just to put Nolan in. You got certain situations where we're playing just like with our defensive backs. But my wife watches and listens to the show, and she wanted me to mention that when we were at Kansas State, we had a Halloween party, and all three of the wives dressed up like the three little pigs, and they really did a good job with it. And I think
awesome.
Those were good costumes, and I think I went as Elvis.
Really?
But I don't remember that.
Did you have the whole body suit?
I mean, I was slick, man. I had some tight pants. But
let's hear those pipes. Let's hear that Elvis.
And now the stage is bare, and I'm standing there with emptiness all around. And if you won't come back to me, then they can bring the curtain down. Are you lonesome tonight? That's it.
Yeah, I know you're not going to get that. You're not going to get that anywhere else. Come on.
There's nothing else we can say after that. We're gonna head off until next week, folks. So we appreciate you guys tuning in. We will talk to you next Tuesday at noon after the Georgia-Florida game. We'll have all the analysis breakdown. And do not forget to tune in on YouTube, 3:20 on our YouTube page. You can check out the watch-along show with Coach Donnan, Dane Young, and Brent Rollins. I guarantee you will absolutely love it. We'll talk to you next week.